And I hope that everyone can see the screen that I'm sharing. Can anyone confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so again, good afternoon, everyone. This is the first workshop that we are doing for the Data Fluency SLO. So, excuse me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why the SLO, the way it has been designed and other stuff. Before I actually move to the assignment part. But the main theme for this workshop is how to create an assignment for the Data Fluency SLO, which is a brand new SLO at WCCU. So you all know that we are going to have the new SLOs, which will be implemented starting fall 2024, which is only a few months away. So these are our first, 4 SLOs that we had determined. And the data fluency basically means that students should be able to learn the methods or techniques to how to collect data, process data, and how to get, evaluate data to comprehend or get some evidence-based information out of the data. So that's kind of like the main focus of this data fluency SLO. And the Data Fluency SLO committee has been working for last few months to come up with the rubric and then also to design the assignments and the resources for the faculty to use. And here are the committee members' name. So as you can see, they are spread it very well across the department. So, you can reach out to any one of them if you need any help. And I have the privilege to serve as the chair for this committee. So therefore, I'm doing this SLO, the first workshop for this SLO. So I already had a question in the chat that whether this PowerPoint will be available or not, and I want to respond to this one by saying that I actually do have a link which I'm going to post right now in the Zoom so that you can have this link and then access the documents and the file that I'm going to work today is already uploaded in this link, and also the PowerPoint that I'm going through today is also uploaded in this link. So you have access to all the things, and I'll be sharing this again at the very end of the presentation as well. So you don't have to worry about writing or taking notes while I'm presenting. And Michelle, will you please keep an eye to the chat box? Yeah. So yeah, if there is any question, please let me know. And feel free to speak out like anyone if you have any question. And if you want to stop me at the middle of the presentation, I'll be very happy to answer. The SLO, the rubric that we came up with is actually available online in this link if you want to find it out, what is the data fluency rubric is. So before I go actually talking about the assignment and the rubric, I would like to talk a few moments about the rubric design, like what design decisions we made as a committee while we are designing this rubric and what motivates that decisions. So many of you probably know that we were given a brand new idea, data fluency, to our committee. And when we look it up, like, search for previous rubric, there were not actually one, which is data fluency rubric available. So we have a lot of rubric, which is kind of like information literacy, quantitative literacy, but not something like data literacy or data fluency. So we have to make some conscious decision about certain things. And I just want to touch those things very quickly over here. You may notice that my slide has a lot of text. And the reason is that maybe this first part of my presentation will be reiterated by my committee member in the following workshop as well. So we just make sure that we have enough information over here so that anybody can follow, even if they are not listening me presenting. So the number one criteria that we kind of like, all agree that the performance criteria or the sub-competence level should not be more than 4, because we realize that as a faculty, whenever there are more than 4 criteria to assess, it's kind of like make our job very difficult. The second thing we also discussed, and we kind of like consciously agree that We are going to design a rubric for data fluency, not something very similar for information literacy or quantitative literacy, which I already mentioned. There are many rubrics available on those two. The main thing is that the later two, like information and quantitative literacy, specifically starts with the question first. Like you just basically come up with a research question or what kind of information you need from the data first, and then you go explore the data set to investigate the question or information. However, in recent data world, it is a very common kind of like fact that in the businesses, people actually identify the data set first, okay? For example, some data set related to the fatal police shooting, gun violence, or NBA player stats. I try to give a couple of information, for example, Amazon shopping records or something like that. So people typically identify the data set first, and then they do an exploratory analysis of the data set to come up with some possible research question or what kind of information they can gather from the data set. So we consciously design the rubric so that we are not preferring like one way either another. So therefore, we did not actually start with the information first in our rubric. So basically, our rubric should be working in the situations where faculty wants the information or question first and then go to the identifying data set or collecting data set, or starts with the identifying data set first and then come up with the question. The next thing that we also want to make sure that rubric should be designed in a way so that it serves the purpose of general education outcome. So we want to make sure that this rubric is widely accessible and many faculty from our general education list can actually approach these rubrics. Therefore, we consciously did not mention any statistical or computer science term, for example, statistical inference, distribution, machine learning, those kind of things. We kind of like try not to use those terms and use the common sense term instead. So we try to focus on the common sense terms as much as possible. The next thing we also want to make sure that we approach is that faculty should have enough flexibility to determine different level of accomplishment for their students. By what we mean basically is that we know that depending on the class level, their student level, faculty may have various approach how they want to assess a course based on this rubric. So we want to provide in our rubric enough flexibility for the faculty so that they can interpret what they mean by capstone, which is the highest level in the achievement of the rubric, or the next level, which is the milestone and benchmark and so on. So instead of using like, very restrictive term, we actually use 4 different levels again and again in the rubric. For example, accomplished is our highest term, goes to capstone, capable, basic understanding, and awareness, so that faculty can interpret their own meanings for their student level, for their class level, and then can treat the rubric from there. Last thing is that we also realize that, it's not like that we should not be giving faculty any guidance whenever we are doing the rubric. So we do have enough guidance in the rubric. However, again, we did not impose those guidance in the to the faculty and allow some flexibility by using some qualifier words. So you will be seeing that there are a lot qualifier words used in the rubric, which kind of like try to relax those things from the faculty, like they may or may not use those kind of thing, and so on. So now that I kind of like, touch base why we designed what we designed so far. So this is what the rubric we came up with as a team. And as you see, this rubric is like the performance criteria are very straightforward. We again keep it very simple, very logical whenever a person is doing some data analysis. So data identification and collection is the first step, then summarize data or analyze data, then evaluate data, and then communicate data. So very simple term. Excuse me. And then as the capstone and milestone and benchmark level, as I was mentioning, we again and again uses the word like accomplish, capability, basic understanding, and awareness in each one of those rating or level so that faculty can interpret their own meaning. And then we also come up with enough guidance so that faculty knows like what he or she needs to evaluate, but again, uses those words like may, several, multiple, many, those kind of things, so that faculty can, see the flexibility over there. So I'm not going to reiterate this whole rubric over here because we will be actually going through whenever I show you the next level. And as part of the rubric, we also gave these statements where it means like, if you want us to elaborate on what is the awareness or accomplished or capable levels means with some reference, we also goes that as well, provides that as well. Excuse me. So here I also provide some resources for the faculty. I know that our students are very, very visual learner. So in case you are looking for some videos to show in your class whenever you are teaching the data fluency class or data fluency assignments, you can use any one of them. So as I will be making these slides available, you can see that each of those each of those videos has the title, how long it is for you to decide whether you're going to use it or not, what it basically mean, and what is the main takeaway for the students from this video. So I have, I think, 10 different videos, and I want to acknowledge this link. These are actually, list of videos are actually compiled by an NSF grant from one of my good colleague. So this is the acknowledgement. And if you go visit this link, you will see some other resources which will be helpful for you as well. So there are the 10 different videos, which I'm not going to go through, but just to provide you as a resource. Next, we are going to go through the direct thing, or most important thing, which is an example of assignment or project. And the data set that I choose to elaborate that project is called Fatal Police Shooting dataset. And I actually have that data set compiled and cleaned and everything uploaded to the Google link that I just provided. And let me, I noticed that few people actually joined recently. So here is the link in the chat. As you can see, this link will take you to a drive where all the data set that I'm using today, along with this presentation, is already uploaded. So let's see how I envision seeing, having an assignment using this rubric. So for example, so the first part of our rubric, if you remember, is data identification or collection. So I'm going to go through in each of the steps and we'll show you what task that I would give my students to do and how you can assess it by using the rubric. So in this assignment, I kind of like try to write it in a language so that you take it as an instructor, what you are supposed to do. So identify the topic, fatal shooting by police officer and its impact. So let's just say that we just want our students to understand or kind of like explore this topic in our classroom. And then, and ask them to, visit this data set. So we already provide this data set and then want them to explore. Alternatively, you can also give the topic to the students and have them identify publicly available data set on that topic as well. This would be probably too much for the students to do at the very beginning, but I do not see why we cannot do that at the higher, like senior level classes. But for this assignment, the source of the data is actually Washington Post database, and they collected all the fatal police shooting happened in USA starting from 2015 to current. So this is the link where all the data sets and their everything related to that is available. And this also tells like who is the source, who is the authority of the data set and everything. And there are a lot of attributes in this data set or features or columns in this data set, which I don't think is going to be like very, very relevant for our student. So what I did is that I created a couple of cleaner version of this data set only for 2 years, actually, 2018 and 2019. And then in my cleaner version of the data set, the features or variables like columns of the tables are ID, which is the victim's ID, then the name of the victim, then what date that occurrence happens, that means the police shooting happens, manner of the date, which is basically how the person is died. It is, I think it's basically shot and tasered or something like that. And then whether the person was armed, and if they're armed, what kind of arm they were having. So we have multiple categories like gun, knife, unarmed, like some people were actually unarmed whenever they fatally shot. Then the age of the victim, then the gender of the victim, then the race of the victim. And I believe that we have like 7 category in the data set: white, black, Hispanic, Asian, then Native American, and I forgot the other 2. I think other or unavailable, something like that. Then which city it happened, which state it happened, whether the victim has any signs of mental illness, like true or false, and then threat level, like whether the victim actually attacked the police officer or didn't do anything or something else. And then flee means whether the victim was fleeing whenever police officer caught them. Body camera, again, whether the body camera was used whenever that incident happened. And for the purpose of simplification, we actually also added some 3 criteria, which is what year it happened, which month it happened, the shooting happened, and what day it happened. So I'm now going to show you some a glimpse of the data set, and we will have some better idea. Like, as I told you, the ID, the name, the date it happened, the manner of the death is like, either could be shot or teasered, and then whether the person was armed. As you see, there are many, many different weapons, and some person was unarmed. Age of the person, the gender of the person, the race of the person, the city, the state, then mental illness, like did the person has any mental illness sign, then the threat level, which is attack or undetermined, then whether the person was fleeing, and then body camera is being used or not. So this is the table that you're going to give to the students if you want them to analyze this data set. And you are most welcome to use any of the data that I was providing in your classrooms, or if you choose to use some other data set, I would think that, a kind of like introduction like this would be useful for the students so that they understand what is going on in the data set. So this data set is a table kind of like data set, as you know. These are the column. We call it sometimes variables or features. And each row is corresponding to one incident, which is basically one record of the fatal police shooting. So I want to tell a little bit more about the fatal police shooting dataset and what I provided in the drive that I just shared. So there are many different ways you can do that analysis to the student. As I mentioned, the dataset I provided is 2018 to 2019. If if the dataset seems like, as you see, the 2018 and 19 actually have 17 columns or features, and then 1,839 rows or incident. If this seems too much for you, okay, we can only focus on each individual year data set. So you see 905 records in the 2018 one and 934 records in 2019 one. Or even if it seems too much for you, I also provided 3 individual data set, which is California data set, so only 97 rows, Texas data set, 69 rows, and North Carolina data set, which is 23 rows. You can even find more segments of the dataset. You can assign each of the state maybe to your students individually and ask them to analyze and then compare their results, because they are going to be very, very different results. Or you can also use like one of those smaller data set for explanation in the classroom. For example, you can go through the steps that I'm going to show you as an explanation, for example, the California data set, and then you can ask your students to do the same thing for the 2018-19 or other data set. So there are many different ways you can utilize that. And again, all of those data are available to you to the link that I just shared in the chat. And I'm going to show you the link at the end of the presentation as well. One thing I would like to mention, these data sets are very, very clean. Like there is no missing data or missing records in the data set. However, if you are just going through some real life data set, there is a possibility that your students, you're going to encounter a data set where there will be some missing records. So if you want your students to teach how to approach those missing records, how to get rid of them or replace them with something, then I can provide you the unclean version where there will be like a couple of missing records as well, and you can teach that additional step to your students. But just to make them simple, all of those data sets that I'm mentioning over here, they are no missing records, and then they are very, very clean data set, so that your student do not have to spend any time pre-processing them. So going back to the data identification or collection. So this is our first competency level or performance criteria in our rubric, if you recall. And here is the task that I would give to my students if I am doing this assignment in my class. So I call it task A, okay? So this starts like this, like explore the federal police shooting dataset and relevant description from this link. And this link will actually take them to the original link of the dataset. Where is it? Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is the link where the original dataset came from, which is a GitHub link. So remember, this is not the clean version dataset. This is originally the Washington Post actually put the dataset. So they can see who actually come up with this dataset, what is the justification for this dataset. They can read this new little description over here and kind of like get them aware about the dataset instead of just blindly taking the dataset from yourself. So this is the link that they will be investigating. And then they are coming back, and then they will be answering this question, which all goes to the data identification or collection performance criteria. You may choose to give them like only 2 or 3 questions. You may choose to give them all 6 of questions, but I'm showing you as many examples as possible. For example, is this dataset relevant for gaining insight about the topic fatal shooting by police officers? So you want to ask them this kind of question, why or why not, provide at least 2 justification. And then these all goes like, you know, whatever question I'm asking over here, relevant, like current, all those goes back to the rubric guidance. So you will see, if you are looking at the rubric, you will see that all those terms are actually mentioned in the rubric guidance. So we want to see whether the student can identify whether the data set that we are providing, or they are identifying whether it is relevant and what are their justifications are, whether the dataset is current, like it is recent one, not a very old one, and how do they justify that? Who collected the dataset, whether the dataset has the right authority or a validity of the dataset. So this is very important step, like we should not be teaching our student to take data from anywhere without knowing the authority. So you want them to read that little description that I provided and justify whether this is a valid source to get this dataset from. Is this dataset available and open to the public for use? Why or why not? This is also another important criteria for the dataset. Then the dataset looks complete to you. So this is a tricky question. Maybe students can answer it very, very differently. Actually, 5 and 6 both are tricky questions, at least for the very, like I would say, freshman or sophomore students. So they may answer it very, very differently. But you may want to point out like the dataset actually does not, like students may actually come up with that justification by themselves, or you may want to point out that the information that we seen in the dataset does not contain any information about the police officer who actually responsible for the shooting. So they may identify like, you know, why the dataset doesn't have all the information about the victims, but not the police officer. Then maybe you can go to the another level of discussion, why it is appropriate or not appropriate to have that kind of thing. The number 6 is this dataset biased? So basically what we want the students to understand is that whether the dataset is reflective of entire population and gathered based on various type of gender and racial diverse set of people, not just only few person who belongs to a particular gender or particular race or ethnicity or something like that. And they probably will be able to say that, you know, this is a non-biased data set because it is collected from all state. And, you know, whenever they see how many male, female, or different races are there, they may be able to figure out that this is a non-biased data set. But we want them to able to identify that and provide the justification. So this would be my task that I'm going to ask the students if I want them to fulfill this performance criteria. And the way we are going to grade them based on this criteria is that whenever the student successfully accomplishes all the factors like the relevance, currency, authority, availability, completion, bias, then we can tell them capstone. And again, as an instructor, you may choose only to do 3. So your capstone could be, if the students get all 3, that's their capstone. But the milestone is going to be several of them, not including all of them. The milestone 2 is going to be a little bit less down, and benchmark is going to be only limiting factors about that. So this is how we envision, like, you know, one performance criteria, and then what are the level of rating that we are going to be using. So I want to pause for a second and see if there is any question. So since there is no question, I'm going to move on to the next criteria, which is a bit tricky. So summarize data or analyze data. So this is the task for the students when they have to do some analysis on the data, right? So we can use any tool like Excel is, hopefully it will be like familiar, students will be more familiar to the Excel, but you can use some other tools which seems appropriate to you for your level of students or the classes as well. But you want them to accomplish some of those tasks by using the Excel. So this is the task B, which is based on summarized data. And I am going to actually use the Excel file as well oops, I'm sorry, this is not right. This is not right. Okay. Okay. Okay, so this is the file that I'm going to work on. And this is the cleaned fatal police shooting on 2018 dataset. So I am only doing the 2018's with the dataset. Dr. Flores, I see that you have a question, but so Dr. Flores has a question at this point, and I want to address this question. Her question is that, is there a reason why in your rubric you don't have milestones separated? We do have actually milestones separated. Let me show you. I don't know whether if it is like, we do have milestone separators. So we have the capstone, then the milestone 3, then the milestone 2, and then the benchmark. This is, I think, what we are following across the university, the same kind of like capstone, milestone 3, milestone 2, and benchmark data set. I'm not sure what do you mean by that, but these two are a little bit different. There is not much difference. But as you see, those factors over here, there are relevance, currency, availability, and completion. And over here, we have basic factors. Like, again, we let that for the faculty to interpret what do they mean by basic factors. But we definitely expect that students, if they are getting a rating at this level, they may not be actually doing all those levels whenever they are doing a data identification or collection for a data set. Dr. Flores, does it make sense? Okay, I think it is good. Okay, so I'm going back to the summarized data. Okay, and then as I was saying that for this, I am using the clean fatal shooting 2018 version for analysis, and I'm gonna be doing a couple of things as I'm talking. The point is not to teach you Excel. I know that I'm not very confident in Excel, by the way, and you may actually have many different ways to do things much faster and better than me. But the point that I was trying to make is that what kind of results we are getting and how to keep that point to the students. So this is the reason I'll be actually doing some stuffs along with talking as well. Okay, so the first question that I have in my the summarized data set, like task B, which is how many incidents are recorded in the data set, how many features are recorded for each incident. So students definitely has to load the Excel file and then realize that, okay, there are like 17 things that are columns are recorded, and they may actually go to the end of the file to notice that there are like I think there are 905 records, although the 906, the first row is taken up for all the column headings. So actually there are 905 records. And this number is important for us to remember, because instead of going kind of like end of the file, I'll be actually writing this number very, very soon, as you will see when I work out. So basically this is like what they're supposed to do, load it up and then see how many columns are there and how many rows are there to answer the first question that I have. And the second question, in the table, which features are numerical and which features are categorical? So this is very, very important for anybody who is actually working with the data fluency or working with any kind of like data, to be able to understand that there are two different very broadly, there are two different kinds of data, which is a numerical and categorical. So this link will give a little bit of introduction about this one, which you can use to introduce your students to those two basic types. And again, after discussion and showing them this slide and these things, and whenever you are discussing through, I think students will be able to understand what do they mean. So you want your students to go back to the Excel file and able to understand that, the kind of like manner of death is a categorical type, and there are two categories that you can see, short and teasered. And armed has a many category. Couple of them we can see over here. Age is a numerical feature. Students should be able to tell you that because these are basically numbers. There is no category. Gender is a categorical feature, man and female. Race is a categorical feature with 7 different outcomes. City is a categorical feature with many different outcomes. State is a categorical feature, which is 52 different outcomes, I believe. We may not have data from each of the states, but I didn't check that. Signs of mental illness is a categorical feature which only has true and false, basically means that the person has a mental illness or not. Then threat level is another categorical feature, whether the person was attacking, whether the person was like, something else, or unarmed. Actually, this is very important for me at least, this is very important to realize that a lot of those people, whenever they got fatally shot, was actually unarmed whenever that incident happened. Fleeing is another categorical, which is basically the person was fleeing or not fleeing, or even if you're fleeing, what kind of like thing that they use, car or food or something like that. Then whether the body camera was used. What is the year? So remember, this is only 2018, so you're not going to see any variance this year feature. But if you choose to use 2018-19 data set, then you will see two different years. Then month is a like 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 12 for January, February, and so on. This is also a category. And then day is again a categorical feature because it goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to 31st in different category. So this is what we want our students to understand, and let us know that, tell that whenever they are answering the question number 2, which is which features are numerical and which features are categorical. Then we want our students to create some summary statistics for the numerical features, okay? At least some kind of like thing like what is the mean, median, or standard deviation for the numerical feature. We only have one, which is age, meaningful feature. And you want your students to create a summary, and we can quickly do that, again, I'm using the way that I know as being the fastest, but you may think of something else as well. But I go actually to the data and then use the data analysis in Excel to create the descriptive statistics for a numerical feature. And this will not be applicable for the categorical features. So only for the numerical, we click to the descriptive statistics. Then we want to see which range of the thing that we want to use. And actually, age is already selected. Okay, so because I think from the past behavior, so these are the range of the thing that we would like our Excel to find the descriptive statistics from. Then output range, I already clicked to this link. That means whatever the result of this descriptive statistics is going to be over there. Let me make sure that I actually select this. Yes, I did. And then summary statistics. And if everything looks good, okay, I don't know why my input range vanishes. So let me create my input range one more time. And whenever I'm doing that, I actually, instead of going to all the way down, I actually decide to write like 906 over here because that saves me a lot of time. So this is why I asked you to remember that our last record is on the position 906 so that we can do it much more quickly. Otherwise, I have to drag this all the way, which is going to take some time. So now it looks good. Like input range is this. The output is going to be showed over here. Descriptive statistics, everything is good. So if I do that, then this comes over here, which is basically telling me that the average age for all the victims are 37.56. standard deviation, other things, median, mode are there. I also want to keep pointing out that the minimum is 15 years old and the maximum is 89 years old. So that's kind of like, good for any student or anybody who is exploring this data set to know. So this is what you can ask your students to do at this point. Next question that I have is that although the age numerical feature is giving a couple of pointers, like what is the average, minimum, maximum, but I do not know about the distribution of the age values, like whether they are young people are mostly get hurt, whether the older people are getting mostly hurt, mostly fatally shot. So that's why I would ask my students to create a histogram. So again, this is going to be very, very easy, straightforward way for me to do. I again go to the data analysis over here and then histogram. And don't worry if you are not following those things. I try to provide enough pointers in the slide so that you can recreate this situation. And as I say, you can probably do a much better job than me. You may know actually better way to do the histogram in Excel than me. So if I do this, okay, then this is actually the histogram that was created. I'm going to move it over here, make it a little bit bigger for us to see so that the students can see like what is the age group that is going to be most fatally shot. So we kind of like can get the, views that starting from like 25 years to 20 or 30 years, this is the age group where this is the most. And then, of course, the very young, there is only one. Very old, there is not much. But in the middle range, there is a lot of fatally shot people. So this will give some idea. And then you can ask many different questions like, what is the most, then second most, and age range or something like that. And student will be able to identify and put that visualization into their report whenever they want to. So going back to my questions, then I asked the question, the last question is that this is a little bit tricky. What is the average age of victims for each race group? So now I would like the students to identify what is going to be the average age for each age group. And for the able to do that, we have to find out the average age for each of the race that we have, right? So we have, as I mentioned, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, and Native American. Just make sure that we are only doing that. And then if you just want to do that average age over here, then again, you may seems like this is too much to ask for the students, but I think it's not, because if you are just asking them to do one or two formulas, okay, I think they will be able to remember that. So the formula that I am going to use is the average ifs. Okay, this is the one. And this is, so remember, our goal is to find the average age of the white people, average age of the black people, where our file has everything mixed up. So we are using this on average age, where there is first parameter is the average range, like which column is going to be finding the average. So we know that we are going to find the age, okay? So this is the column that we are going to select. So again, instead of going to all the way to the down, I'm just gonna click 906 over here. Then the second one is the criteria range, like, what my filter is going to come from. So we know that we are only supposed to select the people who are from the race column and who are only white. So I'm just going to start this one. And again, instead of going all the way down, I'm just gonna type this one. And the last point is that criteria, like which criteria of the people I'm going to choose. So for the first one, we are focusing on W criteria, right? We want the average age of the white people. So if I just write this formula and explain that way to the students, I think they will be able to recreate that. So if I press now, enter, then here is the average age of the white people who got fatally shot. So now I'm just going to, copy paste the formula all across over here. And of course, this is wrong. So this case, now I'm going to change this to be black. And here I go with my black average age. Now, next one is the Hispanic. I got my Hispanic one. Next one is the Asian. I got my Asian one. And the last one is the Native American. I got my Native American ages. So here is the average age I'm not sure whether it is too small for you or okay for you to look at. But whenever we see that, and if you are like creating a graph or something like that, you can of course do that. Insert and then chart. So a plain and simple bar graph, if we ask our students to do that, very soon they will be able to see that white and Asian peoples are in the higher age categories, like the average is much more higher than the Black people. So the Black people tend to get fatally shot whenever they are in the lower range of their life compared to the white and Asian people. So this could be something interesting for the students to see and learn by analyzing the fatal shooting data set. So this is one example, and I'm pretty much sure that you can do many, many different things like this to your student. So I'm going to show you the other questions that I have. And again, please remember that we are, a faculty may only choose to do 2 or 3 questions, not all of them, but I provided many examples for you. So we can also summarize the categorical feature gender by counting how many male and how many females were fatally shot. And all you have to do the count if function, which is very similar to the average ifs that I just show you. This is something we already saw, but how many people belong to each of those race. Summarize the categorical feature day to count how many shooting is occurring in each day of the week to figure out whether is there any preferred day, like Tuesdays the most shootings are happening, or Fridays the most shootings are happening. If we want to figure that out, then students can do that. Summarize the categorical feature month, again to figure out is there any date, for example March or something like that, that's going to be most shooting is happening. Then students may also figure out some other stuff, like, how many victims were unarmed in each race. So I'm just going to quickly show this one. As you notice, I didn't show the other ones, which are very, very similar, but we can also count, for example, how many victims were unarmed in each race. I already mentioned that was kind of like fascinating for me to find out. So I'm just going to be doing over here, count unarmed, to see what kind of like situation we have over here, like how many people are unarmed in the white race, Black race, and so on. So this is the, I think the function that I want to use is count ifs. So very similar, I want to find out how many people are unarmed. Okay, so I want to, the count should be any ID or anything actually. So I think I can go from there with my, in the range, I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't do it right. So if we are doing it this way, then again, it should be like 906, the last criteria. Then this is the criteria range. I think I'm doing it wrong. Sorry, this should be the criteria range, and our criteria is the unarmed, and unarmed is actually in the threat level. So you want to do the L, the column. So this is the column where we are going to do the unarmed. Then the next section is the criteria, and I want it to be unarmed. I know that there is the keyword there. And then this is it, I think, yeah. So I'm not very much sure because we did not see any way. Oh, I know what's going on. Okay. So this one is actually not going to work out because this one is going to give me the number, I just forgot how I did that for this one, but basically what we want is that we want to count how many people are white, how many people are Black separately, and then figure out how many unarmed people over there. I'm going to show you another tool very soon where I'm going to do that situation, replicate that situation over there. So for the time being, I'm going to skip this because I kind of like don't want to spend time figuring out how I did that previously, or instead I want to go on. So there are a couple of other questions like how many victims were not fleeing when the shooting happened in each case. So again, this is something to do with the count ifs. I can tell you how many victims had sign of mental illness in each race. So you basically want to identify each race of the people and then figure out how many has the mental sign of illness as being true or something like that. So you can ask any or all of those questions to the students, and then you can even ask them, like, create summary of another feature of your choice and ask them why they actually choose that. So once you ask them these questions and they provide you the answer, this is the rating that we are using for, the assessing the summarized data. And as you can see, again, the rating goes lower and lower level as we move on. The next one is the evaluate data. So by this time, students should be able to do all the hands-on part. And now they are like going back to the summarization and kind of like see what kind of information that they are gathering. Okay. So based on the summarization, you want the students. So this is my instruction to the students. Explore the following questions while drawing evidences from the data, leading meaningful questions, conclusions, where applicable, justify your answer. So I provided some of the guiding question to the students, but they may come up with their own summarization. They may identify something that they think important for them to learn from this data set. But my questions are something like that, like which age groups were most fatally shot, which they should be able to figure out if they are doing that histogram with the age, which age groups were least impacted by the fatal shooting, is there any pattern while considering average age of the victims belonging to different race. So they should be able to see that, white and Asian people are much more, average age was higher than the Black people. That can justify their pattern and then why they think so. Do you recognize any pattern when considering gender of the victims? I actually didn't have chance to show you that, but if you go to gender wise, you will see that there are like many male than the female. Female is only I think only 90 or something like that, and 800 somethings are actually male. So again, there could be a pattern like most men are most likely to fatally shot. What percent of victims are Black? So this question is kind of like interesting for me. So we can ask them the question like, what percentage of victims are actually Black? And I can tell you that because I analyzed this data set, the percentage is actually 24% of the victims are actually Black in the data set who got fatally shot. And then you can ask your students, is this percentage higher than the percent of US Black population, which is 13.6%? And definitely it is higher. So although if you just go through the data set and see the number of white victim, Black victim, you will see that white victims is much more higher than the Black victims. But if you then proportion that towards the US population demographic, you will see that the Black people are much more likely to fatally shot than the white people. White peoples are actually lesser of the population. So in our data set, I think the white people are getting shot 48%, but the US population, the white people is actually 60%. So you see clear discrepancy there, and students hopefully will be able to identify that fact. So you can ask such a question, or you can actually ask your students to come up with this, like which month has most shooting, which month has least shooting. We can do that if we do that day or month-based analysis. Are whites and Blacks more prone to dying as a result of police shooting because of mental health illness? So this is something you have to use the countifs things that I was trying to do. If you do that correctly, then people, the students can see that which group of people are actually having more mental issues and so on. And after this point, students will be doing enough exploratory analysis of the data set. You can ask them, like, come up with 2 more questions and answer them based on the evidence in the data set. So they can come up with like some questions like this, which are all very good, important research questions. The only thing is that they're coming up with those questions not at the very beginning of their exploration, but once they explore the data set quite well, then they are coming up with them. And I can guarantee that students actually come up with the questions like this, because I already tried this assignment in my class, and I see that students are coming up with wonderful questions once we have done it in the class, the exploration quite longer period of time. Then the rating scale for the evaluate data, very similarly, again, using this word accomplishes capability, basic understanding, awareness. The last component is communicate the data. So this is pretty straightforward because we just want the students to create a detailed report, or sometimes we call it story, based on all the things that they have done. So starting from the data identification, summarization steps, evaluation, along with the graphs and charts that they produced, everything should be part of this report. You also probably are going to ask the students to present that because this is communicating. So you want the students to communicate their exploration in the class as well. So something similar to this, you can do that. And the rating scale for this one is, again, differently based on 4 different criteria, and provides the guidance, like, how you want to grade this and so on. So this is kind of like what I would like to show as the assignment wise. I just also want to show you another very simple tool, which you can take it in the classroom. And you will see that how easy to create the graphs on this tool. We don't have to go through any Excel functions or anything. And the way I actually use this tool in my classroom when I want my students to come up with questions. So I actually introduce the dataset to the students and take this tool to the classroom, quickly generate some of the graphs, and then students actually come up with some questions based on the work that we have been doing. So I'm just going to show you very, very quickly. Hopefully I have this. Okay, so this is open. So this is CodeUp. I'm not going to be talking about what is that and so on. You can browse this link to feel like, what is this? So I want to create a new document, and because I'm going to import my data set locally, so this is my local file. And let's see whether I have it in the recent. Where is my, okay, so this is the same file that I used by Excel and show you, same file I'm loading. And very simple, the file has been loaded over here. But what I want to show is very simply how we can do the graphs over here, which takes in Excel quite a while to do that. And again, I use this one for the students to help them to generate some questions. So I click to this graph and I drag it over here, or even click the graph, it comes over here. So each of those data records are actually one of the points over here. But just to organize my graph, and if I want to show that first graph that we generate, like what is the age, right? What age level? All I have to do is to click this age and drag it to the x-axis. And if I do that, then all the ages will be organized according to the age, like, data points will be organized according to the age. This does not look very nice. So let me see whether I can do it a little bit better. So over here, there is a bar sign. If you click it and if you say go group into beans, like I want to, instead of different ages, I want a bin kind of like 10 to 20 years old, 20 to 30 years old, something like that. Then it shows very, very nicely like what age groups are most fatally shot. You can also see how many count or how many people are getting shot very, very easily. Like if you just choose this ruler as I show you, and then choose the count. Now, very quickly, you can see that, 266 people on this age range was shot and so on. So again, this is a very, very simple graph. And now if I want to see like what is happening across the gender, okay, all I have to do is to grab this gender and put it in the y-axis, so that now it is going to show me how in the male or female the gender differences are. So we see that 30 to 40 is still the the most fatally shot age group, but females are much, much less than the male. You can see that. Instead of gender, if I click to this gender and remove this Y gender, now I want to, let's say that do it in the race level. So if I just do it in the race level, okay, then I can see that that race level, this is a little bit too much going on in this graph, but as you still can see like what kind of people, how many people are getting shot in each race, what are their most age range. So ironically, again, very, very important to notice is that although 30 to 40 came out as the average age for all victims, and white population has that age range, but for the Black population is actually 20 to 30 is the most populated range. So this is, as I mentioned, is very, very, I think this will be interesting for the students to know that young Black people are most, tends to be dead compared to the white and other ranges and so on. So this is kind of like, for me, as I'm saying, research question generating tool. So you can do many, many different things. For example, if I don't want to do this one, or maybe go to the race over here, okay, and then get rid of the age, I'm sorry, and get rid of the age, but do the central of illness, mental illness over here in the, So now you can see that, across all the white, then black, then across all the ranges. So white people is actually much more tend to have the mental issues than the black population. So this is the mental issues part, true part. So this is where I was actually trying to recreate by using the Excel when I was doing that countif thing. So you see that, the white population has many, many mental ill people. Even if you take the percentage, this percentage is going to be more than the victims who are black and the mentally ill as well. So this is not mentally ill, which is false, and this is mentally ill. So you can do many, many things like, instead of this one, let me show you the last question, which I also find interesting, like the threat level. I'm not sure whether it's going to show you because it's like too many going on over here or not. No, not the threat level. This is not the correct one. I think the attack is the correct one. Armed is the correct one. Okay, let me quickly drop the armed. Oh, this is too much going on. I don't think this is going to make any more sense. But I know for sure the unarmed category actually has, again, much less Black people than the white people. This is too much gibberish. This is not going to give me much better information. But for me to show you this tool is that, you can kind of like play with this tool in the classrooms. And after showing a couple of those XY things, students possibly can see that, what kind of questions they want to ask to the data set whenever they want to explore from the data set. So that's kind of like all the point of having this tool and so on. So I only have a few minutes left, but I'll be happy to stay over here a few minutes more if you have any question. This is my email address, and this is the link that you can, this is the QR code that you can use to go to my drive that I already communicated with you. So I'm going to stop, and if you have any question, please.
Dr. Deb, thank you so much for that that very thorough workshop. Before anyone leaves, Dr. Deb has provided a place for you to ask her questions, so you can scan that with your phone. But I am going to put a link in the chat for you to fill out a survey, particularly for this particular workshop. If you will please go out there and fill out that survey so that we can keep data on our workshops in city, we would be most appreciative. Are there any questions for Dr. Deb?